My husband is 57, and I'm 49. My mother-in-law is 81. She used to be very independent, but since my father-in-law passed away a few years ago, her health has been declining. She can walk and take care of herself. She's just frailer. And she's become much more soft-spoken and generally nice. Being perfectly honest, she never used to be easy to get along with, and my husband agrees. But anyways, that's all right. I didn't have much contact with her, and she had her own life. My husband visited maybe once every few months because we live very close to her, about half an hour away. Recently, though, she wants him to visit more often, and she gets upset when she isn't invited to things we are doing. For example, we recently went on a trip to celebrate my husband's birthday, and he didn't want to bring her. It would really limit the sorts of activities we could do. She insisted we should have gone on a chill trip and brought her. Last week, we went to visit my family. My mother-in-law called my husband and said she was really sick and admitted to the hospital. My husband obviously panicked, and we both took a flight that evening back home to see what was wrong. It turned out she was totally fine and apparently had a mild cold. We spoke to the doctor, and she said my mother-in-law had said she couldn't breathe, and when the doctor said she could go home, she insisted on being admitted. I told my husband it sounds like she just wanted to be admitted so you would come back to check on her. He was appalled, but later on agreed that it did kind of make sense and sound like something she would do. She wants to stay with us now because she is sick. I said no, she is faking it, and I don't want to deal with her all day. My husband thinks I'm being a selfish jerk. And now for some comments. I'd warn your husband to be on the lookout for dementia. My mom insisted for a decade that my grandmother's increasing jerk behavior and constant medical needs were her faking it. But it was all signs of her declining memory and need for more hands. On care. Mixed bag. You're not the idiot for resisting having your mother-in-law move in, but you're the idiot for being generally cold and flippant toward her or health, even if she faked the recent scare. She's an 81-year-old widower living alone. She's not feeling great, possibly has more fear about being alone given her frail condition, and she wants to see her son more. Maybe her asks are too big or too much, but it seems like y'all could be more sympathetic and consider stepping it up a bit. Make your own informed assessment of what she does need and decide what you can reasonably do. Let's assume she's doing this for attention. That means she's so sad and lonely that she would rather stay in a hospital and be around you guys than to be independent and be alone. Soft, you're the idiot. I totally get why this is annoying and inconvenient, but you should probably give her a little more grace. One day you're going to be that age and see your friend and family dwindling. You might find yourself in the same position, so you may want to just love up on her while you guys still have her around. My dad had 5 kids with 4 women. Messy, I know, but he's dead, so I'd appreciate everyone being respectful. We are 36, 34, 27, me, 25, Nicole, and 19. None of us are close to Nicole because she is always insanely selfish, possessive, and has the world's most draining victim complex. We all had as little contact with her as possible. Prior to this wake, none of us had spoken to Nicole outside of family weddings for years. Of all of us, I was closest to my dad in his last couple of years and took care of him the most. So when he passed, I was the one to work through all the paperwork and organize a funeral, his belongings, and his wake. At the wake, there were about 70 people, all in my dad's house. I was sort of in work mode to avoid the grief, making my way around the room, etc. When I noticed Nicole had arrived, I asked my aunt to greet her and continued with what I had to do. I did greet Nicole, but she kept trying to come up and talk to me during the wake, wanting to go to a separate room to talk and generally seeming a bit erratic. I kept trying to hint that I really didn't have the time or the emotional space to be fully in my feelings at that time, but she just didn't seem to get the message. This went on for nearly 2 hours and I was tired. My feet hurt, my blood sugar was low, and as pathetic as it sounds, I really just wanted to talk to my dad who was on the ground. I wasn't having the best day. So I finally sat down with my little sister and Nicole storms over and in front of the entire room, raises her voice and says something like, "Oh, so you have time for her and not me. My dad died too, and I'm trying to talk to you." I don't know if I was in my right mind, honestly, because I still do not remember feeling anything that day other than lightheaded and completely and utterly incensed by Nicole's outburst. I told her quietly, "Nicole, someone has died. You are not the victim today. I will not deal with this embarrassment on top of everything else. Get out of my house." She started arguing with me, but I just walked away and my fiancé escorted her out while I went into the kitchen for a few minutes. I've had to block Nicole because of the amount of messages she's sent, but since the dust has settled, a couple of relatives I've spoken to have said it was harsh to kick her out because she was sad about the death. I think that considering this is a pattern of behavior for her, it didn't have much to do with the grief. My siblings agree, but a few family members have gently suggested I reach out and apologize. Should I? Should I? And now, for some comments, you're not the idiot. You didn't kick her out because she was sad about the death. You kicked her out because she was being demanding and entitled to your attention specifically. Why couldn't she have tried to talk with one of your other siblings? Why does that responsibility solely fall to you? You're not the idiot. I think you did a lot. It's really demanding of her to storm around and feel entitled to your time and emotional support on top of everything else. I think you did well telling her off in such a difficult situation and managing your dad's passing and funeral and organizing everything. Like maybe a perfect person could have been more empathetic, but you were at your limit and communicated it, and I think that's good enough. Having said this, he doesn't seem very emotionally mature. So if you feel a need to resolve this ever, you will probably have to make the first step. But I assume you might be the best judge of this. My condolences. Please take care of yourself. Grief is difficult and takes a long time. You don't owe it to anyone to be super polite during this time, or ever. Everyone sucks. Obviously, you were struggling with the death of your father, and being the one organizing everything can be overwhelming. I think you should have been more straightforward with her that you didn't have the emotional capacity to have that conversation with her, not just telling her you had other stuff to do and avoiding her. It's annoying when someone is an energy vampire, sucking the life out of everything. But in this case, her father had just died as well. You could have said what you said with the exception of "get out of my house," then asked her to move along or she would have to leave, not just kicked her out. I think if this is weighing on you, then you know you probably should apologize, but take the opportunity to explain why you jumped to kicking her out, as she doesn't leave much space for other people's feelings and it's exhausting. Context. My husband owns a coffee shop that usually closes at 10 p.m., but sometimes he would close it earlier if he wants to. Tonight, my 24 female, husband, 25 male, told me that we should eat out for dinner since we didn't have food at home. I said yes, and suggested that we go out around 9 p.m. and told him I'll put the kids to bed at 8 p.m. with the house clean and everything. He agreed, and by 8:30 both kids were already asleep and the house was clean. I messaged him that I'm ready, and if we could go now. He said that he still has a customer, and I was fine with it and mentioned something about the food. However, he didn't respond until 9:30 rolled around, so I messaged him again. Nothing. At this point, I was starving and getting more hungry by the minute. I kept messaging and calling him, but no response. I was getting upset because he does this all the time. I would usually be fine, but tonight I was hungry, plus the kids woke up. I messaged him that I was going to just fry an egg and this dinner is over. He can eat out alone. That's when he started messaging me again, telling me he was busy and he could just order me food. But I told him to forget it because I'm not going to starve myself again waiting for him. He got upset and said that I should be more understanding because he was working, but he does this so much that I don't want to deal with it anymore. Am I the idiot? I'm not mad that we didn't go out. It was the principle of just telling me if we were going to eat or not. Edit to add. I didn't mention a lot of things that y'all wanted info about, so here goes. Who was looking after kids? This one caused a mass panic. My dad lives with us. He usually looks after them when I'm not present. Edit. What did the kids and grandpa eat? There wasn't any food. The dinner I cooked earlier that night. I didn't cook anything for me and hubby because he wanted to eat out. Why not have snack? I did, but it wasn't cutting it because I was an exhausted mom that needed more than just a snack at the point. Plus, if I ate any more, I would have lost my appetite. Why not just go to his place and bring food? We live in a small town. The shop was located in a neighborhood that is unsafe to walk at night. I don't have any means of transportation, and doing a 20 walk isn't really a safe option. He said he was busy with a customer. He said that around 8:30, dinner the date was 9, which was the time the customer left. However, relatives came by and he wanted to entertain them, but he didn't bother to tell me that until around 10:30. Why suggest dinner at 9 when shop closed at 10? The place he wanted to go to closes at 10, but since we often go there around that time, it has become a habit for him to message the resto beforehand. So when we arrive, the food is ready and we're out of there after 30 minutes. Don't plan a date during the work hours. I agree, poor planning, but earlier in our convo, he was complaining that it was a slow night and should have just closed the shop early. What do you mean he does this all the time? I mean, he would make a plan and not go through with it. And that's not just when he's working. He would make plans with me, then be out with other friends' family later. When our time came to do something, he would stop responding and would respond much later. Ungrateful for being a witch that he had to work late while I just sat my spoiled butt waiting for food in my mouth. I was going to ruin the business with my attitude. Where did y'all get that? I was fully capable of feeding myself, but he insisted on the dinner together. Also, why would I want to ruin a business I initially funded? I also work and am the main provider. I didn't think this info was relevant or wild for making that assumption. The part that I was upset about was not giving me a quick update, not the part that he was still working. Thank you for everyone's response. I appreciate it. I will discuss setting hard boundaries regarding set times for dates. Also, it was hilarious seeing y'all making assumptions about me. Thanks for the laugh. I live in a Southeast Asian country where, 1, living with a relative is the norm, hence why I didn't mention it. I honestly forgot that it wasn't the case for other countries. 2, COVID restrictions have been lifted years ago, so that's why most of the food businesses here close around 10 p.m. or later. It's normal. The neighborhood we live in isn't the safest for a woman to walk around alone that late, but that doesn't mean that a couple of people wouldn't hang out at a coffee shop. It's not that deep. Also, I would appreciate it if you would actually read the part that stated it was his idea to close early. Ike why y'all keep saying that I was forcing him to close early. And now for some comments, I don't know why people are being hard on you. If he can close the shop early, then why didn't he do that? When you called him at 8:30 and said you were ready, he could have turned around the sign on the door to say close and just let customers who are already there finish up their coffee, and then he could have closed the shop in peace. It sounded like he made plans with you, told you he was closing the shop and then just didn't. On the other hand, if he cannot close the shop, why didn't he just say that? So you could make your dinner earlier than 9:30 p.m.? And finding out after the fact that the reason he was late was that his relatives stopped by is even worse. He's just stringing you along, expecting you to wait for him hungry during the dinner hour, while he keeps changing his plans based on whatever whim he has. I think he needs to do what he says he is going to do and stop stringing you along. If what he is going to do is, sorry, I can never close the shop early because I just really need the customers, then that is completely fine. You can plan around it, but telling you one thing and then doing something totally different is not okay for him to do. You're not the idiot if he offers to go for dinner with you at 9 p.m., meaning he's closing early as he's a grown man who knows his business hours before he makes the offer. Then at 8:30 p.m., when he has a customer, either he tells the customer he's closing early, which he should have advertised, or he cancels with you. The minimal thing is to send you an update at 9 saying, sorry, but you're canceling. I mean, you could have as well, but no communication when he was the one who scheduled with you. You're not the idiot. Well, I was leaning toward no one-eyed the idiot is, hey, sometimes stuff happens. It sounds like this happens often, him working later than planned. Also, it's rude to expect you to wait for hours without any communication and then blow up on you when you got tired of waiting and just ate. I, for one, would not be happy about waiting until 9 or 10 to eat dinner. I like to eat by 7 at the latest. For the past few years, my daughter, 17, has been extremely depressed and has been having huge anxiety attacks whenever she has to leave the house. She hasn't been diagnosed with anything, but we are going through autism assessments and ADHD ones too. It's been difficult on her with all the appointments, and I understand how she feels, though she always says I'm not listening to her and I'm too harsh when I make her do things. Edit. She was sent to medical professionals last year to test for BPD, but it was a waste of time as they can't diagnose until she's 18. 3 days ago, she had a meeting with her teacher at college to do some extra college work as she finds it difficult to concentrate in class, so this meetup was going to be very helpful for her. She woke up on that day an hour before the meeting and was angry about the fact she had to leave. I gave her 2 options. I said that she either went to the meetup or she stays at home and gets kicked out of college. She has already had 4 chances at this college and has been kicked out of 2 before so nobody else would take her. She can't get a job either from intense anxiety or this huge fear of leaving the house. My partner took her to college, and she didn't speak to her once in the car. Then she got out and called her. She called her names. I can't repeat and said I shouldn't have made her go because she was too anxious and hates going. Also, it being the Easter holidays and it wasn't natural to go during them. She went in and finished the meeting about an hour later. She got home and was perfectly fine, though my partner says that I maybe should have let her have it off today and work something out with the teacher. My partner says she could have been having an episode and I shouldn't have said anything because it's not our daughter's fault. She can't deal with emotions well. I don't agree, but does that make me the idiot? If there's any info I've missed, let me know. And now, for some comments. You're not the idiot. This is not going to make me sound good, but here it goes. I have diagnosed ADHD and depression. I get in these moods where everything seems stressful and overwhelming. But once I do whatever it is, I'm fine and it's never as big a deal as it was in my head. Example, we moved to a new area where we don't know anyone last year. I needed to get a job. I found something I was interested in, applied and set up the interview. I was pretty excited about it. When the day came, I did not want to go and was having a complete panic attack about the whole situation. My husband got me out of bed and helped me get ready. He drove me to the interview and I panicked the whole way. But I went in, did the interview, was offered the job, and I started a few days later. I ended up getting promoted and a raise within 2 months. I'm not lazy, and I am pretty motivated when working. But the thought of going to that interview seemed like too much. My point is, this is what you will have to do until you can get her diagnosed and properly medicated. You cannot just let her off. Your partner is enabling her. If my husband hadn't drugged me to that interview, I would have spent the next few months falling into a deep funk. You cannot let her lay around and wallow. You're not the idiot. Anxiety and depression thrive on giving in to their symptoms. It's hard to fight them, but when your daughter gives in, the anxiety and depression is reinforced, and it becomes easier to give in next time. She needs to fight it for her well-being. She needs to fight it so it lessens its grip on her. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that happens quickly, but she can do it. Cheer her on when she does what seems easy to you but impossible to her. It will get better, but you're all in this for the long haul. Probably controversial, but I feel like this is a situation where you're the idiot, and yet you did the right thing. Yes, everyone is right that she needs therapy, and perhaps you're pushing her too hard in college when it's clearly not the right fit for her at this time. But I know from experience with family members that once you accept that she's not capable of doing anything and allow her to just sit at home all day, it's extremely hard to come back from this and have her become a contributing member of society. So on paper, you handled it all wrong, but she came home and acted fine because the anxiety leading up to this meeting was worse than actually having the meeting. I'm 31 and my husband is 38. We live about 3 hours away from my sister-in-law's family, her husband, 2 kids. A few years ago, my husband and I bought a really run-down property on the coast, a couple hours from where we live. I wanted to make a project of fixing it up. My husband liked the idea and was happy to support it, but it was mostly my project. I really put a lot of effort into fixing it as cheaply as possible, went over and stayed there for many nights, and literally did a lot of the construction. My husband came and helped about half the time. I sourced recycled wood and such, so almost all the materials are found in some way. Once it was partially finished, I thought I could enlist my sister-in-law's help. So I told her about this project and asked if she wanted to come stay over for a few days with her family and help finish up the work. She brought her kids and husband and slept out on the deck and did things like painting and building some furniture, etc. When it was finished, it was really beautiful. We started renting it out on Airbnb and have good success with that so far. I did say that my sister-in-law's family could come stay anytime because they helped with it. There's 2 parts to the house that have separate kitchens and bathrooms. So we've kept the top for us and my sister-in-law's family, and the bottom for Airbnb. Last week they were there, at the same time as some paid guests. I got a complaint from the guests afterward that my sister-in-law's kids had made fun of their kids, and that my sister-in-law told them that this was their house, so the guests don't get to dictate how their kids behave. I asked my sister-in-law about this, and she said their kids wanted to play with the guest kids on the beach, and the guest kids tried to ask her kids to leave them alone, but they wouldn't. They were playing volleyball, and her kids were much better and rightfully proud of it. I got pissed and I told her she wasn't allowed to stay there anymore if she can't be considerate of the fact that this is also a business and you can't be a jerk to customers or anyone. Now she says I'm a jerk because I promised she could stay anytime. And now for some comments. A few days of labor doesn't equate to multiple family visits. Say you'll pay her an hourly labor rate for the time she spent helping, then take off the amount it would have cost her to stay there as a paying guest all the time she has so far, and then you'll call it quits. My guess is that she'd owe you on a basis anyway. Even in the running costs for the time she spent there with her family, it's probably adding up. She put your business investment at risk. She's lost her privileges. And if it isn't clear, I'm saying, no, you're not the idiot. You're not the idiot. You said she couldn't stay there if she can't be considerate. She took that as a ban, when all you were trying to say is you and your children need to be considerate of the Airbnb guests. You promised sister-in-law she could stay there anytime, and she can. That doesn't mean she doesn't have to be a polite guest. And she is your guest. She and her kids do not own the property, and they need to stop acting like it. The rule, if she can't be considerate, is too vague. I think a fair rule is that if you have Airbnb guests, when your sister-in-law is there, and the guests complain about the other guests, then you will discount the stay 25%, and your sister-in-law will pay for it. Separate issue, but I'm sure her kids were on one team and the guests' kids were on the other in beach volleyball. Her kids spent a lot more time at the beach than these visitors, so no surprise they were better. If her kids had split up the teams and even rotated team members around, everyone would have had a better time. You're not the idiot. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. And don't piss off the customers. Your sister-in-law wrongfully feels entitled to your space, instead of recognizing that she is there as a guest. That needs to be corrected before she should be allowed to stay there again. Best practice, I'd say, is to not allow her to be there when there are paying guests for the time being. That'll restrict her ability to go and also keep her away from people paying to use that space. She needs to be reminded that the hierarchy of entitlement for the home is your family, then paying guests, then free family visits. I, 29 female, have 4 siblings. Mark, 33 male. Josh, 31 male. Eva, 29 female. And Tony, 26 male. Me and Eva are fraternal twins. Our mother was a stay-at-home mom, but she was emotionally absent. Growing up, our father was very hard on us. He wanted his first son to be a doctor, so Mark had to work all the time. He had Josh learn violin at 4 years old and made him play for hours. Tony had to be a lawyer. I had the chance to be a beautiful kid, and I participated in beauty pageants starting at 3 years old. Eva was free of this because she wasn't beautiful, and my father didn't think a woman could do much anyway. She always had liberty and could do whatever she wanted, without pressure on her shoulders. She could have friends, had no care about her grades, and didn't have to work her butt off every day. We're not proud of it, but we tended to exclude her since she was slacking off while we were working so hard. She also was a problematic teen. She skipped class, hung around with a bad crowd, and drank. She even disappeared for a week without notice when we were 15, stating after that she wanted to get away with her BF for a road trip, while I wasn't even allowed to leave the house for a night because my parents wanted to make sure I did my work and would only eat what I was allowed to. Eva would throw tantrums saying she was neglected and no one would care if she disappeared. I was enraged with her because she never realized the chance she had, and we only grew apart from that point. After high school, I went far away and started working as a makeup artist. I eloped at 26 with Eli, 27 male, and never looked back. Last month, our father passed away, and my siblings and I went to the family home for the funeral. We stayed for 3 weeks and reconnected a lot. Mark had a breakdown at 23 from all the pressure and barely recovered. He is now happier, got a job as a tech in a lab, is married, and has 2 little kids. Josh stopped violin and is a drummer and piano teacher, and Tony is a public defender. Eva chose to be a social worker. It was a bit weird with Eva since we hadn't seen each other for years and gave up contact too. She once again tried to dismiss what we went through, saying that she was as abused as us even though that is nowhere near true. One evening she completely flipped out on us, calling us jerks and saying that we were like our father and excluded her. She kept going about how her parents never took an interest in her. Neither did we, and that she went through hell thinking she was worthless. Mark started to cry, so I took Eva out and lashed out at her, saying she was the she for being jealous of our misery and that she will never fit in with us because she never got abused. And it was insane of her to claim she had. She left that night and didn't apologize to any of us. When I went home, I cried a lot and told everything to my husband, expecting him to support me. But he said I should be the one to call and apologize to my sister. So am I the idiot? And now for some comments. Your sister disappeared at 15 for a week and no one noticed? This is severely abusive. Not that it's a competition, but it sounds like your strict father focused on kids he felt worthy and ignored her because, well, what's the message any kid would get from this behavior? That she's worthless, nothing, not worth the effort, invisible. You and your siblings may have felt the pressure to succeed, but she was ignored entirely. This isn't an enviable position in the family. It's horrendous. You and your siblings are continuing to abuse her by minimizing her abuse and alienating her. If you didn't admire your father, then stop replicating his behavior. Eva sure as hell was abused. She was just abused in a different way. She told you she was neglected, but you didn't seem to listen. Neglect is abuse too. You exclude her because you don't understand that and then dismiss her feelings? Yes, you're the idiot. Your husband is right. Call her and apologize. But you are like your father and excluded her. You did treat her like she was nobody because she didn't bask in your shared misery. Everyone just ignored her because she wasn't seen as pretty or smart. She was a lost cause not worth bothering with. Any wonder she was acting out? How else would she be seen? You didn't even notice when she went missing for a week. That's just wrong. So yes, you're the idiot. You're the idiot. So self-centered you don't see she was abused in a different way, and you and your siblings stuck together and she was left out there too. I feel so bad for her. 30 male, was at my brother's, 34 male. House when my sister-in-law, 31 female, went into labor. They live in the countryside, so the signal isn't too great sometimes unless they walk up the lane, so my brother was supposed to take her to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance. But for some reason, he decided to freak out and drive off somewhere. I can't drive, so I ran up the lane to call 999. It took forever to get a signal, and then it took forever for the ambulance to get to the house. I almost had to deliver the baby, for God's sake. She ended up giving birth in the huge back of an ambulance. This whole time, my brother had just disappeared. He finally turned up at the hospital about 8 BF hours after he disappeared. Apparently, he'd gone to our dad's house until we found out my sister-in-law gave birth and made my brother go see her. I yelled at him outside the hospital for being so stupid. He told me that he just got scared and didn't know what to do. I told him that he's going to be a bad dad if he keeps reacting like this. What's he going to do when the kid gets injured and it's his responsibility to take him to aid? Is he just going to dump the kid and run off to dad's again? He's such an idiot. He started crying and called me a twat for being so mean to him. I just lost it with him. I get that he was scared, but he seriously needs to get a grip and help his wife. I the idiot? And now for some comments. In my personal opinion, you're not the jerk. I get that becoming a parent is a huge thing, that even if you think you're ready, you'll never truly be. But he just disappeared for 8 hours while his wife was in labor. What if there were complications? What if you weren't home the moment she went into labor? He needs to get his stuff together and seek therapy if his response to stress is to run away, leaving his wife in a potentially harmful situation. And she needs to rethink their relationship if he does not. Nope, you're not the idiot. I'm sorry, wife. There's a woman going into labor and her life is at stake. Your brother being scared doesn't matter, not even the least. We have moved on to higher stakes. Okay, fine, he disappeared, but who the heck returns after 8 whole hours? That's crazy, and I'd divorce such a useless husband. You're amazing for keeping your chaos together and prioritizing the mother. Ask your brother what would have happened if you weren't present. His wife could have died. You're not the idiot. He's already a bad parent. His wife and child could have died from lack of access to medical care. When things go wrong in a birth, they go wrong fast. He needs therapy as soon as possible. I hope you can be there to support your sister-in-law because he has just shown her that he can't be trusted alone with the child, and he can't be trusted to get her the medical help she needs. This is grounds for divorce. Wedding season brings out the absolute worst in people, so here we go. My brother Jay is marrying his fiancée Debbie in July. Debbie asked both me and my sister Christina to be bridesmaids, but we both turned it down. This becomes relevant later. A couple of weeks ago, Debbie contacted me and Christina and demanded we throw her a bridal shower, though this was more directed at me as Christina is currently in university. Her reasoning was that it was the least we could do after we said no to being bridesmaids and didn't have any costs and hadn't contributed to the wedding yet. I told Christina I would handle it since she's very conflict averse, and I sent Debbie back a polite text saying we will not be planning, hosting, or attending any such shower. Debbie got very angry and implied that she would try to uninvite us from the wedding. I don't think I am wrong in thinking that this is something the maid of honor unusually does for the bride, so I'm curious why this evening came close to landing on our plate in the first place. Jay asked both me and Christina to reconsider, and even said he would pay for it if we just pretend we did, but I said absolutely not, and Christina can't really plan it all on her own. Jay is now getting pressure from Debbie to react to this in some way. I guess she wants us uninvited or to have some kind of consequences for us not helping. This has caused a fair bit of drama. Jay's mother, not my mother, has used this as an excuse to lay to him about Debbie, whom she dislikes. Jay's dad and best man are giving him a hard time for letting her treat us this way, and Jay is digging his heels in because he feels like we're all ganging up on him. He's accused me of pretty much ruining the wedding planning experience and thinks that he won't end up with a lot of family there if this goes on. I don't think I'm in the wrong for not wanting to do the shower. Am I? Edit. We said no to being bridesmaids because we are busy. Christina is a full-time student in a different city. I have a startup to run and the construction of a house to oversee. Neither of us had the time for dress fittings, her bachelorette trip, all the ancillary brunches and lunches, etc. Christina has a significant age gap with Debbie, and she is a shy person. She wouldn't have wanted to do it without me since she doesn't know anyone else. From my side, I don't have the bandwidth, and even if I did, being a bridesmaid isn't fun unless you're close with the bride. But the overwhelming reason we said no is because we couldn't dedicate time to it and thought it was best to leave the position for people who wanted it and would have felt honored. Debbie picked 2 other bridesmaids. And now, for some comments, you're not the idiot. Seems totally weird that having refused to be bridesmaids, she would ask you that, especially since that's the Mo's or another close friend's job normally. My book, she is looking to cause drama by doing this knowing you'd refuse and looking for an excuse to uninvite you from the wedding. Strange power play by her. You're not the idiot. You cannot be ordered to have a shower for someone. That should be handled by her wedding party or a friend of hers. I'm curious why you and your sister declined to be bridesmaids. Is she always this demanding and unreasonable, and you just don't like her? Your brother should be having a hard look at her behavior and her desire to punish people that don't follow her orders. This won't end well for him. You're not the idiot. Aren't bridesmaids the ones who typically throw the bridal showers? Or do they only do the bachelorette party? I don't know, but you're not a jerk either way. She can throw her own damn party. It's baffling to me the weird entitlement that seems to come over people when they get engaged. I am a 25-year-old female and he is a 27-year-old male. We've been dating for 6 years and are thinking about marriage in 2-3 years. My partner is very family-oriented, which is one of the traits that I fell in love with. However, he is also a mama's boy. He believes that since his parents raised him, he should pay them back by respecting them. However, his way of respecting them is by obeying everything that they say and want. His parents and I have crossed paths over the years, and on most of these occasions, his parents have made offhanded comments about my physical appearance, my career, and how I have changed their son. When something goes wrong in their son's life, they're quick to blame me as the reason for his downfall, even if I had no involvement in that aspect of his life. Since my partner and I are seriously thinking about marriage, we have been meeting up with his parents and my parents more often. During one of the dinners with his parents, my potential future mother-in-law said she would be sad if I marry her son because she does not think of her and I have a close relationship. I was in shock by her statement and did not respond back. After that moment of silence, she continued to ask me if I agreed that we did not have the best relationship. I think at this point, the initial shock was disappearing and I started to feel hurt by her words. In response to her question, I said that I don't think we have a close relationship because I often feel attacked by her. I then continued to list a few prime examples. As we discussed these examples, the conversation became more heated and turned into a full-blown argument. The last thing I remember saying to her was that if my partner and I ever broke up, it will be all her fault. Now, she complains to her son about me all the time and refuses to speak to me. Her behavior is causing some strain in my relationship. Am I the idiot for arguing with her? I come from a cultural background where respecting your elders is pretty much the golden rule. And now for some comments. You're not the idiot. Obviously, they're the ones instigating. And if you should snap back after a while, that is entirely what they wanted. However, as noted, there's a bigger issue of your boyfriend actually stepping up and making his own boundaries with regard to his parents and their treatment of you. Clearly, it has been going on for some time now. It is great and all that you love each other, but part of being in a serious relationship is stepping up where you're needed the most. And in this case, he has to make things clear regarding his parents, that this sort of behavior is unacceptable. And unless you make this clear with him and he takes proper steps to ameliorate the situation, you would be you're the idiot to yourself if you marry a man who won't put your needs for basic human decency and respect at the forefront. I mean, really, you're not asking for much aside them giving you proper respect or at least keep their mouth shut. I don't feel this is asking for too much at all. Edit. By the way, I come from the Philippines, so I understand the culture you're talking about. Similar values in that regard. However, coming to arguments with your potential in-laws is not all that uncommon and does not necessarily constitute disrespect. I wouldn't feel guilty about it because, again, they've been instigating this for years, and frankly, if your boyfriend won't stand up for you, do you think your own parents would approve of him not defending you? Do you think your parents would just sit back and let you be disrespected? This issue needs to be resolved before moving forward because this negativity will only create conflict from both sides, and I doubt you or your husband or potential child would want to be in such an environment. Hell, it'd only get worse if you have a child with him. The criticisms will just pour, so yes, he would still snap.